What's up, guys? Old Painless here, and I'm back after a little bit of a delay, I guess. Been gone for a little bit. I'll touch on that later on in the review, but more importantly, today we are looking at GenerationToy's fourth figure in their Devastator or Gravity Builder line. We have Bulldozer, which is a really unique name. Pretty creative, guys. Basically, it's their interpretation of a Bonecrusher figure. And he's a pretty cool figure. We'll take a look at this in just a second. Big fan of this alt mode. I think it's really nice, but let's go ahead and take a look at the packaging super quick and some of the accessories, and then we'll dig into the figure. The box is pretty standard for GenerationToys. They had a nice illustrated, painted rendition of the character in the front right there. Looks really nice. Big fan of this sort of presentation. This is probably the least flattering of all the illustrations. Kind of has a derpy face right there. So not entirely into that look, I guess, but nonetheless, it's still a really nice package. We have a nice sort of silver foiled border with the GenerationToy logo and Bulldozer name up on top right there. And then we have the nice textured packaging material, the Gravity Builder line art in the back, warnings, GenerationToy, etc., etc., and that nice sort of lined pattern look right there. We do get an additional head. I've already actually swapped out the heads. I'll give you a closer look at both of these later on in the review, but you get a replacement head and screw. We also do get the instruction manual, again pretty standard fare here from GenerationToy. Same painted rendition of the character, that nice sort of gridded background look right there. Pretty good instructions, fairly informative, gets you from point A to point B, and in this case point C because it's a combiner arm, but gets the job done, fairly well detailed, good stuff. And then lastly we do get the sort of generator here which can attach to the vehicle. We'll show that off in just a second here, but pretty nice, has rubber tires to it, they all spin freely, has that sort of line caution sort of sticker taping there, which is painted on. A nice little detail, and of course this will be the combiner forearm with the hand inside, just like we saw on Navi. It opens up, we have missiles which can pop out and be placed on the outside for some extra detailing, and then of course the hand joint, and this also can attach just like on Navi to the back of Bulldozer in his bot mode. So we'll show all those different features off right there. And here we have Bulldozer or Bonecrusher in his alt mode, and this is probably one of the better modes of this figure right here. I'm a big fan of this. I mean, it's a really bulky and robust looking Bulldozer. I think it really kind of fits into their line and aesthetic very, very well. It has, again, sort of that universal green across the board. Probably more so on this figure than the other three guys so far, but that's always been Bonecrusher's aesthetic in the G1 and whatnot. So, but I do like it. It looks modernized, has a huge front bulldozing scoop on the front right there, which I like. Get some good detailing throughout, some of that yellow and black striping that we see universally across the other three figures, and some decent paint breakup, some silver detailing throughout, even like on some of these corners and whatnot, these little nooks and crannies. And you get a fair amount of color breakup, because again an abundance of green on this, but we have silvers, some darker plastics, some darker painted plastic throughout here and here. We get sort of the orange and silver parts on the back here, which are painted really nicely. Again, this will be the chest for Bonecrusher or Bulldozer in his robot mode, but kind of functions as like a tail light kind of detailing almost on the back right there. So I like that. It looks pretty good. And then we do get the clear plastic windows, just like the other figures, through here as well. Some exhaust piping and whatnot, painted silver, looks pretty good. Yeah, looks pretty nice overall. I think the back actually cleans up very well, more so than Navi did. It just feels like a really solid piece in this case. And one thing I wanted to just show off, it wasn't really apparent in the prototype stages and all the promotional photos and stuff, but this front grille is actually a clear plastic, which is really subtle, but it looks really nice. It even had some nice silver paint apps on the front there, bordered by this nice darker gray plastic as well, but just a nice little touch. I didn't expect that. Pretty cool. Now, I do like this alt mode quite a bit, but it's not perfect. I think these pistons are a little lacking. The front scoop is held in place really securely because they opted to put these side rails along here, and they do peg into the side of the scoop, so everything feels really secure. But it's just an odd design because you have these sort of hydraulic pistons here, which it doesn't really show off very well in this mode because it's locked into place, but these actually extend like 3 inches or so, maybe 2.5, 3 inches. But you get none of that functionality in the alt mode because things are pegged into place so tightly. It's almost like an afterthought, and it seems like it's more included just for the robot mode, so you can actually move portions of this out of the way so you can actually display the shoulder pads better. So it's a neat little bit of engineering, I guess. You can see the piston extending right there, but it doesn't function very well. It doesn't do much for the alt mode. And the other thing that's kind of weird is we do have these side little pistons added on as well, and they do extend, but they don't actually lock into place. There's a sort of a channel here along this rail which this piece can kind of plug into, but it's not a secure connection. I mean, it can sort of extend and run along that rail, but it just pops out. So it's not like an actual, secured, functional piston in that sense. And again, if you move the scoop at all, it just pops right out. So it's like they added this extra bit of engineering, which I don't know if it was really worth it because it's not necessarily a very usable bit. And I guess aesthetically it adds a bit in terms of realism, but I don't know if it was really a huge payoff in the long run because I feel like it detracts a bit from the robot mode as well. So, interesting design choices. I just don't know if it was the best way to approach it though. Again, it does look good. I think just from a presentation standpoint, this Bulldozer looks phenomenal. I mean, this probably is one of my favorite of the 4 currently released figures in terms of just the alt mode itself. So kudos to them in terms of just the overall look. It's just the playability aspect is not very high on this particular figure. I mean, this is really the extent of what you're going to get unless you start on pegging stuff, and then it kind of becomes a bit of a mess. So now the generator piece attaches to Bulldozer here the exact same way that we saw on Navi. So it has kind of that keyhole design on the front here, where you basically just plug it onto the back of the figure and twist 90 degrees, and then that will lock it securely into place. And you can see it does roll. It has rubber wheels on the back here, and that looks pretty good. I think it's a fairly convincing representation of like a Bulldozer generator combo. I don't know necessarily if you'd see that out in the real world or not with construction vehicles. I'm guessing probably not, but in terms of integrating parts forming into a design here, I think it does it quite well. And just one quick note too, you do have rolling wheels at the bottom of the treads, so it does roll pretty well. And we do also get weapon storage, just like on Navi, so good stuff right there. And just to show off the combiner form, we can basically open up this back portion, fold out the hand, and then you can pull this joint to extend the forearm. And then we do get the combiner arm right there with quite a bit of flexibility. So I'm not going to show this off really too much or any comparisons. When we finally get this sucker combined, there'll be a lot more time for that. But you do get some plenty of motion and movement with this arm right here. Very nice. And just for one quick comparison to kind of get a sense of the scale right here, here is Masterpiece Sideswipe. So you can see he actually stacks up pretty well. I'm not sure if it's an MP scale per se, but I think it looks pretty nice. He's definitely a much chunkier and much bigger figure, that's for sure. But not too bad. So I think overall, in the alt mode form at least, I think this is a very successful addition to the line right here. He certainly fits the part of a Bulldozer. He looks like Bonecrusher to me, maybe a bit updated in that regard, but and he certainly follows the trend of GenerationToy and the aesthetic that they're going for. So let's go ahead though and get him transformed into robot mode, and that way we can see how well or not that actually stacks up as a true Bonecrusher representation. Just kind of loosen these up and bring them up. I've seen a couple different ways to handle this front portion. Some people have actually left this solid black on their figures, but what you can do to mimic Navi is rotate this portion down, which then gets you access to flip up this panel and put it along the back side, and then rotate this back up to get the rocket launcher on the side leg, and you still get some movement right there as well. And go ahead and squeeze these together, and they actually clip in together, and that's your lower body basically all done. Just loosen these all away from each other. And these actually peg into place on the side. These were a little tricky to figure out at first, but they do just rotate out and then secure in with that forearm tab. Unclip and extend the arm joint. This kind of feels like Warbitron's hammer sharpener design. With that elbow joint, just a lot less fussy to deal with right there. So not bad. This is kind of odd too. We have this nice purple and silver painted detailing throughout the forearm, but then we just cover up that entire backside with that kibble, rotate this piece, and that sits right on top there as well. So just clean things up. We'll rotate, bring the arm down. There's a couple ways to kind of handle this shoulder kibble. I'm going to show you the way that I enjoy it, but we'll show you later on the intended way, or at least the instructed way that GenerationToy shows you. So I like to condense this joint here to make it 90 degrees like that, and then rotate this pole arm inwards just like that. That way we can get the upper shoulder here facing in like so, and then slide that back down to the pole. And you can see how this extension here seems like it's really implemented just for the transformation portion, but by doing so you then get this nice sort of shoulder pauldron, or shoulder armor there on the outside of the arm, which kind of works pretty good. And just be mindful, these pieces can pop off. They're not actually glued into place. These were originally designed to, according to at least the prototype photos, pop off and be used as sort of hand axes. But if they do fall off, there's 2 pegs, 2 holes. Just pop them right back on. And the last piece, fold this top portion back, flip that up, and there we have Bonecrusher, or Bulldozer, in his robot mode. So it's very similar in terms of design as Navi, or their Scavenger. A lot of the underlying architecture, basically from the legs to the torso, are identical. Leg design, excluding these little side portions. torso, the ab crunch, the upper chest rotation, that's all identical to what we saw in their Scavenger or Navi. The real big difference is how the arms are articulated, as well as how the head is covered up right there. So there's some pros and cons to what they did here with this figure. First and foremost, I just want to touch on the paint, the overall look, and some of the articulation here. I think paint-wise, this is another success from GenerationToy. It has that same overall green and purple and silver aesthetic. I think it looks really nice actually in that regard. I think the purple breakup, like on the upper chest, on the pelvis, the forearms, the hands are solid purple. That looks pretty good. Even the silver sort of breakup is a nice touch to it as well. And I love how the orange sort of highlights the chest area right there, which looks really good. And we have the silver, the darker sort of grays mixed throughout, especially the abdomen and the side right there. It's a subtle detailing, subtle little paint apps, but it does a lot to sort of break up the abundant of green plastic that you would normally associate with the Bonecrusher figure. With that being said, though, not really a lot of paint going on in the arms. I mean, the upper shoulders are just pure green plastic. We do get a lot of the purple and the darker gray for the elbow joint, at least complemented here with that silver, which is nice. And we do get some additional paint, like silver on the outside, and then again, depending on how you're placing the shoulder pieces, you might have the visible pistons on the side right here, and the silver there as well. And there's a back shot for you there. And then the lower legs, we do get that visible sort of black and yellow striping right there, which is nice. Some, again, more visible silver, some actually kind of pointy rocket launcher, I guess, accents there on the upper thigh, which is nice. But overall, I mean, I think he looks the part. He looks pretty good. Now, I did go ahead and already replace the head sculpt here, as you've probably already noticed. This is supposed to be more the G1 accurate or G1 inspired design with the actual visible mouth and whatnot. I think it looks pretty good. I think it actually looks a lot better here than how it showed up on their actual packaging and art details. But the actual head that comes pre-installed is a masked option, which, now that I'm looking at it, I think I actually may prefer the non-G1 accurate head just a touch more. That actually looks pretty good. And both offer a orange eye that's light piped, although in this case, just like Mixmaster, we have a ton of plastic going on back here, so not really a lot of light getting in there very well. But just to let you know, you pop out a single screw, these two pieces separate, and then you pop it back onto the ball joint, push them together, retighten it, and you are good to go. Now, I do want to touch on the articulation, but while we're doing this, we're going to address the big elephant in the room here. These giant freaking shoulder pads, or shoulder armor, or whatever you want to consider them to be. So, right off the bat, we do have a head on a ball joint. You get a fair amount of wiggle and rotation. It can do a full 180 rotation backwards. The arms do rotate. A squeaky joint, kind of like fans' toys, but you get the full 360. You do get some outward articulation, and you can see this is becoming kind of a nuisance here. These are big, bulky bits of kibble, and yeah, it's not really that pleasant actually to be dealing with. The arms only get you about 90 degrees. It's supposed to be sort of a double jointed elbow, I think. You're only getting about 90 degrees, and again, you're kind of having to manipulate this whole giant kibble bits here as you're sort of messing around with the figure. So, I mean, luckily this gets you a lot of flexibility. You can rotate this backwards, move it around, sort of get the arm posed the way you want it, but it is sort of a pain in the ass, to be perfectly honest with you. You do get an upper bicep swivel, hand swivel, open hand design there, kind of like masterpieces on the single pinned hinge right there. You do get a upper chest rotation, an awesome ab crunch, a ratcheted waist, which is nice, and then legs do get you some movement, although a bit limited depending on your kibble location and situation here. But you do get motion, and the knees are really nice. They get you way more than 90 degrees with this sort of circular design. Again, I kind of pointed this out in the Navi review, but it does look a little bit odd. I love the design. It's a really clever engineering choice, but whenever you're dealing with a lot of sort of solid, rigid edges, incorporating such a extreme curve like this does look a little off-putting on a joint like that, but it works nonetheless. I think it's really cleverly done. And then the feet here do give you all the motion and articulation you need. I mean, they plenty of up and down for the toe. They do swivel here as well, which is nice, so you can kind of get some really outlandish outwards foot location if you have to. You get an ankle swivel there as well. And then the heels, make sure you flip this little gray plastic piece out because it does peg in to the back of the foot, which creates a solid heel spur. So really nice. Now the other way to actually transform these shoulder pads is to have the scoop facing forward, and you fold up this piece here along the top there, and it kind of reveals the hydraulics or the pistons along the side, or I guess you could fold those down if you wanted to cover that up. But that creates such a much larger profile, in my opinion. I don't know. It still works. It looks okay, but not really the choice that I like for these for the placement here. Another thing that kind of irks me too is, you know, this piece just feels lazy. I mean, they basically just took this cabin, folded it backwards, and had a flap fold up. You know, when you think of Bonecrusher, you don't think of a giant piece of metal or plastic behind his head like this. It feels like they really should have invented some sort of, you know, double hinge system here to have this fold downwards. You know, that way, if you didn't really care about attaching the forearm to the backpack in robot mode, you could at least have this completely non-visible and have it maybe concealing this peg altogether. So, just a really odd choice. It feels, I guess, under-engineered or, you know, fairly poorly thought out. You know, this just aesthetically looks really off to me. I don't like that at all. And here you can see you can actually attach that forearm kibble or the combiner pieces to the back here. Open this up to kind of create like a winged look, I guess, and you do get that orange plastic and silver painted rocket thruster detail, just like we saw in their scavenger take. And yeah, it adds some bulk to it. It actually makes him pretty back heavy, but he actually stands up quite well with those secured heel spurs. And then from the front, you can't really even notice it because these giant shoulder kibble pieces are kind of obscuring it. So, but just an option in case you want to cover all your bases right there. And just to show it off, here's the gun in its stored mode, but it's on a hinged piece. Pegs into place, and then you can fold out the handle here, which is more than long enough to be secured in his hand. But it looks pretty good. It's black plastic, no paint on this, but it has plenty of sculpted detail, which I like, and then the silver painted front, which looks pretty good too. And you can see he holds it pretty well there, so no problems. And for the money shot, here are the first 4 figures from Generation Toys in all their glory. I think they all look awesome together. Bonecrusher or Bulldozer fits right in. Again, nice purple, silver, green sort of paint breakup throughout all 4 figures. It really does create a very cohesive team. You know, despite some of the flaws, maybe some of the kibble on this figure, I mean, I think it really fits the part, and you know, it does a great job of giving us Bonecrusher in this lineup. It feels very fitting. So final thoughts on Bonecrusher here, or Bulldozer. I think in terms of the team, again, if you've already purchased the first 2 or 3 figures, I mean, you're already going to be probably in on this because you're going to complete the set no matter what. From an alt mode standpoint, he more than excels. Maybe a bit limited in terms of playability with the piston design and stuff, but I think the Bulldozer mode looks fantastic. The robot mode definitely has some odd design choices, and I think it's because they largely reduced engineering costs by incorporating the majority of their scavengers sort of framework into this figure. And as a result, I mean, they're basically having to deal with these additional, pistons and kibble in a way that they can't really, there's not much you can do with them, just the way it was designed, the underlying engineering here. So instead, we're now forced to have to, pop this kibble up on the shoulders and sort of pretend that we're dealing with some sort of, robust shoulder padded armored look here. And I mean, aesthetically it does work. I think this actually looks pretty cool in silhouette and in profile here, but it's certainly an acquired taste. This may not be your cup of tea, but from sort of a chug or a reimagined aesthetic and look, I think it's an interesting take on the character, at least. And it has most of the posability and playability in this mode that you'd want. You're going to be dealing with this kibble here, extending this up on this little piston, just so you can manipulate the arm joint. Then once you have a pose that you like, then sort of repositioning it. But it is kind of annoying, I think. It's a little more of a nuisance than I would have liked with this figure. One additional note on this piston design here is that it doesn't feel brittle. Like, I don't feel like I'm going to break this, but it does feel a little thin, I guess I would say. And if you're the type of person that sort of manhandles a figure in their transformation, I would not be surprised to see something maybe snapping here. I'm not trying to be negative about that, but it definitely feels like this could flex or maybe break with a lot of pressure here. You can kind of see the plastic sort of bending a little bit right there as I kind of manipulate that arm right there. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's a pretty unique take on Bonecrusher. I definitely like it. I think once you have him posed the way that you want him, and you have the kibble kind of managed how you need him to be, he's going to look really good on a shelf. But from a playability standpoint, it's just not the most fun figure to kind of pick up and mess around with. It definitely does not have kind of that fun factor that their Scraper, or for me, their Scavenger or Mixmaster kind of had. I dig its aesthetics. I can definitely appreciate what they're going for here. I do think that they sort of limited what they could do with this figure by recycling a lot of the underlying engineering instead of going for a unique transformation process on this figure. But I get it. They're a combiner. They're trying to put out 6 figures. This is going to, by reusing a lot of what they had on Scavenger, it's going to cut costs, save costs and whatnot. So it makes sense. I just don't know if it really resulted in the best possible figure that we could have had here. With that being said, it'll probably end up being a combined mode anyway, so it's kind of maybe a moot point for you. But with that being said, I definitely appreciate you guys checking out my review. There hasn't been a lot of figures coming out lately that I've been too into or have purchased. I do have 2 potential ones coming out soon, though. I have finally got my Mastermind Creations Jaguar. I also got MP Rodimus Prime, so maybe putting up some reviews for those guys. I have a backlog of characters and figures that I've bought over the last 2 years, mostly third party, so I may be putting up some more sort of, I guess, retro reviews. Not really that retro, but they're certainly not relevant. But if you're interested in seeing some of my impressions on other figures, I'd be happy to put some more content out there. But enough of that. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.